Hello and welcome to Rebooting the Music Mainframe, which is a symposium, I've been told it's called, which is a collaboration, a series of talks over the next 4 days by us here at Byta and our friends at Sled Island in Calgary. And first and foremost, want to thank our sponsors, funding partners, Canada Council and Factor. And then my name's Mark, by the way. I should have said that, but you can see it down the bottom. Maybe I'll talk about myself in a second. But yeah, these two organizations, Sled Island is a music and arts festival in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And we partner with them on several events, sort of starting, I guess, coincidentally in the middle of the pandemic. So I want to thank Mode and Sean and Curtis, who are the three people we deal with the most there. It's by far, sorry, Rob, my favorite music event in Canada. Everybody has to have a favorite, and they're definitely mine. And then, yeah, so Byta is a platform for sending and receiving digital audio. I'm the founder. And alongside Byta, which is a tool, we also do a lot of work around knowledge, especially around our How We Listen strand. And what we're doing here with Sled Island is a very important part of that, because education, learning everything you can about the music ecosystem is super, super important. So I want to thank Colin and Jamie and Jen from our side for putting it all together. I think the visuals look amazing. And then I just want to thank everybody who's going to be participating moving forward. But what's super interesting about this, or these events, are that it really was a collaboration. It was Colin and I and Sean and Mode who sort of came up with a lot of the ideas, and we sort of workshopped them together over a couple months. And for me, the ones I'm involved in, a couple of them, and this is one that I had an idea about, because I've, over say the last 2 years, I've met so many interesting people from different organizations, be that regional organizations in Canada or say manager organizations. And then other ones that I've heard lots about, She Said So. And I started to realize that maybe for artists, it might be overwhelming that there are so many of these organizations that are helping and driving different issues forward. And so I thought what would be best would be if we could bring some people who work at these organizations together. And I first went to Robin, who we've known each other for a handful of years. And what I liked about getting Robin involved is that she's worked at a handful of different organizations, but then also is in the process of moving from one to another, and different types, maybe with different goals. And I thought that she would be perfect to lead a conversation. So Georgia and Nadia, welcome. I'm going to turn off my video and I'm going to take notes. So if anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat, and then I'll leave you three to it. And Robin, if anything pops up that I see you haven't looked at, I'll give you a nudge on the chat. Yeah.
Sounds great.
But thanks everybody for coming. It's really great to be here.
Cool. Well, thank you, Mark, and welcome to our other speakers and to everybody coming today. We did see the treaty acknowledgement at the beginning for Calgary, so I will share that I'm coming to you from Winnipeg, which is Treaty 1 territory, homeland the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji, Cree, Dene, and Dakota people, and homeland of the Métis Nations. So really exciting to share this as part of our programming in Canada and let people know where we're coming from. So I'm going to start by introducing myself and then giving the other speakers time to introduce themselves. We were chatting just before this about we all have some similar and some very different backgrounds in music organizations. So we're going to have a conversation. We have a few key topics we're going to start with, and then if you have any questions, just pop them up in the chat as we go through. So I'm, like Mark said, I'm Robin Stewart. I run the Western Canadian Music Alliance, which is a culmination organization of all the industry associations in Western Canada. Probably a lot of you on this call are members of Alberta Music, or Music Calgary, which is a bit separate, but same notion that The organizations I work with are there specifically to support artists and industry living and working in Western Canada, which is in part the same goal of WCMA. Our main function is running the Breakout West Conference Festival and Awards program. And we also do other work throughout the year, but those are the core things. And we are actually in Calgary this September. So small push to that. This will be our 20th year of that event. And as Mark mentioned, I am working with another organization as well now. I have started working with Women in Music Canada, which again, another organization really focused on supporting artists and industry and moving support opportunities and career opportunities forward, specifically with female identifying folks in music. So that's my background, and I'll pass it over just to left to me on the screen to Georgia.
Hello, thank you again for inviting me over. I represent actually two people. I represent Andrea Magdalena, which is the founder of the network She Said So, which is an international women in music network that was created back in 7.5 years ago. In September, I met Andrea Magdalena back then, almost in the beginning. She Said So has become since then a huge network in the world, supporting women in music and also creating the alternative Women in Music list, which is one of our most proudest initiatives. I also have been working for music, arts and culture for the past 30 years. I've been the DIRCOM, communication director for Sonar Festival in the past 25, but I left Sonar like a year ago. I'm now a consultant in everything art and culture. I work with an artist, a DJ. I work with a TV program. So I'm a bit all over the place right now, which is what I call the gig economy of the 2022. Well, I think all of us represent communities. So I think my community definitely has been She Said So, is the community I identify mostly. I live in Barcelona. I'm Italian. I worked in France. I still work with a lot of French people. I've been a lot to England, as you can hear from my hybrid accent, and I learned a lot from the UK industry, head of the word for the music industry, I think, for learning. But I think it's great to be here discussing communities because it's the future of the move on after that terrible 2 years of losing jobs and losing opportunities, and also what I called and when I've heard that it's called the She Session, which is the recession for women during the past 2 years, which has been huge. And we have to, we really have to put it out there because of the, limitations and terrible situations that we've been through just for being the woman in the room, in the house. So it's important that we acknowledge some of the issues that we've been through in the past 2 years. It's strange times.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Georgia. You're absolutely right, and looking forward to diving into all of that. Nadia, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks, Robin. Yeah, hi everyone. Great to be here. I'm joining you today from London. So I've been working in the music industry for over 20 years, started out in music PR and then primarily worked in music management. So I've been doing music management for over 17 years. I still manage my first ever client that I picked up 17 years ago. And I guess, over my experiences in the industry of being a woman in a really male-dominated industry, working in a male-dominated job role, and in a male-dominated genre of grime, kind of, street kind of rap music, I found it kind of really isolating, many experiences as a woman. So that led me to want to start up an organization, which I started 5 years ago, called Women in Control. So I'm also the founder of Women in Control. I'm going to speak a little bit about some of the work that I've done with Women in Control, but I've also kind of wanted to really empower women in the industry and create a lot of awareness on a lot of the issues that are happening. I've done some reporting, looking into the lack of representation of women in the music industry as well. And that also led me to put myself forward for election to become chair of AIM, which is the Association of Independent Music. So I got elected as chair in 2021, so I'm still actively doing that role. So like Georgia said, I think so many of us in the industry, you know, we sit and we work across so many different projects and so many different areas, which is incredible, but busy. But yeah, great to be here and really excited to be having this conversation.
Excellent, thank you. And you're right, AIM would be the equivalent of the Canadian Independent Music Association, which and the provincial chapters that I work with being similar. So I love it. I'm going to give you, because you mentioned looking into a lot of the stats around the inequality. I'm just going to read out a few stats that were pre-COVID, and then we'll dive into the next question. So just as because we dive into a lot of different areas, but we all have some history with, or some work with women and underrepresented genders. And just to highlight that, pre-COVID studies showed that only 9% of company heads in Canada were women. That female employees earn 25% less than the average music company employee, and that they received that female-run organizations received approximately 10% of grant funding. So these are huge numbers. Well, they're small numbers, I should say. They're
Yes.
huge impact facts to keep in mind, and I would suggest that during COVID, there are a lot of studies coming out now and looking at what communities were disproportionately affected by it. We know that our industry as a whole was massively affected by it, full stop, every person in it. But I think that a lot of the movement that was started and was really positive pre-COVID, specifically for female identifying underrepresented gender folks, was somewhat put on hold or even turned backwards in some of the challenges of COVID. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out in new studies as we go forward and see where we are effectively moving that pin towards equity. So I want to dive into the first question and come back to you, Georgia, with this is, what barriers in the industry were sort of the key focus around the inception of the organizations you work with, so we can sort of set a basis of why we're doing what we're doing.
I mean, I think Nadia pointed it out in a really cool way, in a really perfect way. It's like, I come from electronic music, which is especially a night and late night profession for a long time. And I say night and late night profession because I think that the night and late night have a characteristic that really define what was working behind the scene, behind the stage, and in production and in different roles as a woman back then. I'm 56, which I always point out is really important because I don't think sometimes the feeling and the vibes are same for generation to come or generation earlier or after me. But I think back then we were like 3 women working in the techno industry, even in the world. I can even name them all. And managing DJs from Detroit to Canada, of course, with John Aquaviva and Richie and people that at the time was kind of going up and coming. But it's true that the techno word and the DJ word is a word that has been profoundly marked by one only genre in on stage and sometimes even backstage. So it's been a necessity that has been growing. And then Andrea Magdalena, the founder, as she said so when she founded, she's, I think, something like 20 or 25 years younger than I am. But we all had, despite of the age or generation, the same issues back then, which is, I wrote an article on LinkedIn, and it's actually exactly more or less 1 year before the big Me Too happened, or even 2 years before. So 7 years and a half ago, it's a very important milestone for me. And I think for lots of movements to be born around that time, in between 7.5 and 5, as Nadia pointed out with Women in Control. I think that nothing happens everything happens for a cause. And I think there was a mood and a zeitgeist and a moment in which all communities of non-white men in the industry in between 40 and plus were actually ruling the music industry in a very strong way, in a very, let's say, homogeneous way. And we all felt underrepresented, we all felt alone, we all felt individually disconnected to our everyday life with work. And one thing that happened with Andrea, which was, it's a beautiful story, and I always said it's like a love story sometimes, you know, is beyond my husband. I have the story with Andrea, which is I wanted to focus on a collectivity. I'm a networker. And in a sudden, I was in London with 2 friends, and they said, just leave your project, just join this one. This one will definitely be somebody you get along with and you will understand. And we were tiny back then, but it was immediate love of all the manifesto and all the statements and all the vibe. And the only thing I can say positively to everybody is that feeling, I still have it now. And that feeling is that I know where my network is, my net is, anything comes, anything goes. She said so has been with me all over the COVID times also, which is, you know, very important to feel inside you during your professional feelings and contact. So thank you, she said so, and Andrea, but also this is the aim of a community, you know, and that was the aim of a female-oriented, now intersectional community, not only female, but it's true that it started with women. And what I always said is women are inclusive and not exclusive, which means that all of us, we always believe not only create one community, but collaborate with other communities and network even more. And it became the Women's March that we all know.
Yeah, you're right. And it
Robin?
And
Nadia?
recognizing that we all need support to raise each other up. Nadia, the same question to you. What, you know, in the inception of your organization and the work you do, what were the key barriers?
Yeah, I think, you know, like I said before, and touching on what Georgia said as well, definitely, you know, when I started out in the industry 20 years ago, I'm looking around me, I knew I wanted to get into management, and there weren't any role models around me, and there wasn't really any support network for women in the industry. And I think that's something I really fight for, is representation now. I, you know, really struggled to get taken seriously in the early stages of my career. And I think speaking to so many women across my network and across the industry, I know that that's something that a lot of women struggle with, is getting taken seriously. I really struggled with that being a manager, and I really struggled with my image, you know, how I looked, how I dressed as a manager. And a lot of these experiences kind of built up on me. And, you know, I've done a lot of extensive research into a lot of the barriers that women face in the industry, but you know, it's kind of like compound interest in a way. It's just like all these microaggressions that you deal with on a daily basis in your careers that we have to deal with, like really chipped away at me and my personality. You know, I came into the industry really ambitious, really excited, really bold, really passionate. And I felt that over the years, I started to change how I dressed because I didn't like the certain attention that I was receiving. I would dress more serious and not wear high heels, not wear short skirts. And that's something I really regret in my career, because I feel like I should have been able to stay the way, you know, that I was, my authentic self, and be able to be that and be taken seriously. But it was something that I really struggled with. You know, as a manager, I had loads of bad experiences backstage at shows, just being completely ignored. You know, I've been in dressing rooms with my artist, and big artists have walked in, or big production managers and people, and I'm just completely ignored. Or somebody that's working for me, a guy, gets assumed to be the manager. I've been thrown off festival stages while my artist is on stage performing. And that's happened multiple times. I've been laughed at by bouncers outside of clubs, been assumed to be an assistant, a groupie, a girlfriend, a stylist, an extra, a makeup artist on a regular basis. And I think all those experiences started to make me feel like an invisible woman. And when, you know, I started having quite a bit of success in the industry, I started working with more women in the industry, and I was like, wow, these are incredible women. And I also started to see that these women were kind of getting overlooked by the industry. And I saw male counterparts, like Georgia said, you know, like the default kind of white male in the old boys club, those kind of guys progressing through their careers. And I wondered why, what is happening? Why do I feel invisible? Why are these women being invisible? And that's really what led me to start Women in Control Up. really wanted to break down the barriers and have honest and real conversations. So, you know, again, you know, about having a successful career with a successful artist, touring the world, doing amazing shows, going to festivals, TV shows. And when you post those experiences on social media, people only see that side of your career and your job. So what I really wanted to do was break that down with Women in Control, you know, to kind of talk openly about my experiences. And also, like Georgia said, the shocking thing was when I felt almost shameful to speak about how I'd been treated, when I spoke to other women in the industry, pretty much every woman's experience was the same. And we just never spoken to each other. We'd never spoken to anybody about it. And we just kept going on like it was our norm, and we just accepted it. And that's something I really wanted to change. So with Women in Control, it started out just on social media. It was just organically me posting other women in the industry that I felt, why don't we shout about ourselves enough? Why don't we big ourselves up? Why don't we shout about our achievements enough? And also, why don't we uplift other women enough? So that's what it was. It just was, you know, posting other women on my platform and saying, I think this woman's amazing because of this, this, and this. And then that led to me doing events and panels where it was twofold. It was also, you know, talking about people's journeys, hearing somebody's journey and realizing that everyone's gone through these barriers and obstacles, I think is really inspiring for others, but really creating those role models, because representation is just super important and really changing the culture in the industry of really being more open and having more honest and real conversations and not being embarrassed about it. So that's how it kind of started out. It's, you know, driven by my passion and my own personal experiences.
I was muted. I'm hearing that we, you know, myself included, that these all came from, you know, the drive to do these, this work that focuses on uplifting those who need support, and those who have less represented voices, came from personal experience. And I think that's probably a similar experience that a lot of folks in this industry have had, whether that is a gender bias, you know, a cultural bias, etc. These are all, it's something that the world has had in place for so long that it's hard to get to those changes. Just to touch for a bit from the organizations I work to answer the same question, that, I mean, I would say, you know, the WCMA and Breakout West started as a way to help support artists getting from one level to the next, to get to the next step of their career. More recently, a lot of our focus has been in areas like our Key Change partnership and work with groups like Advance and Women in Music Canada, where we are recognizing that there's a lot of different challenges depending on where you're coming from. And we do a lot of work with Indigenous artists, trying to elevate their voices, and not just their English voices, their voices in the language they like to perform in, and making sure that we have balance across our programming of not just of performers as well as speakers, and that we're really representing the industry and the community that we're part of. So that's a similar thing. I mean, I think the importance placed on this is really around the similar barriers that you're talking about, that there just wasn't, everyone was experiencing these things that at the time, the, you know, white male wasn't necessarily experiencing the same. And to be clear, this is not, this is not a bias session, but it's really about raising each other up and having, you know, not having just the automatic go-to bookings, that we need to look a bit deeper than that. So I would, you know, I think that there's probably, through the work that you've all done, maybe there have definitely been some successes, and I know that I go to less festivals that are all male, and I think that's wonderful, and I love programs like this are part of a success. So I want to dive into the question of, have your goals changed since you started? Has there been movement that have changed and adjusted what your current goals are and what you're looking forward to? And maybe we'll switch that around and come to Nadia first.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, like I said, when it started out, it was very organic, and it just naturally grew with Women in Control. I think the pandemic was a huge turning point for me because, you know, as a woman running my own business and as a manager, if there's any managers in the call, it's really 24/7 with your artists, and the schedule's really, really intense. So when the pandemic hit, a lot of my work got cancelled and paused and put on hold. So for the first time, I've had some free time on my hands, and I was like, oh, what can I do? And I was really excited to actually be able to invest that time into Women in Control. So I started doing events online, you know, found the power of Zoom. You know, I'd never jumped on Zoom before or used it before the pandemic. And I thought that was an incredible way to build community, but connect community, because we were all going through such a difficult time in lockdown. It really hit so many across the industry so hard as well. So that was really, really important for me. And I also got time to do some research and data, because I think also something that I've found as a woman in the industry is being taken seriously with your issues or your complaints, and also how you address those complaints as well. I think, you know, women can be just dismissed as like moany or emotional, or you know, on your period or whatever. So you don't get taken seriously when you bring up complaints. And then that's why I really gravitated towards data, because I felt like data really helps us tell the accurate picture, take the emotions out of it. Let's just tell you the facts of the situation. So, you know, I know that there's been some really great extensive studies that I really look up to and admire in the USC Edinburgh University research and reporting that's been done. There's been some incredible research from a lady called Vic Bain in the UK, who did a report called Counting the Music Industry, where she looked at the number of female identifying musicians that were signed to record labels across all rosters in the UK in 2019, and that was only 19%, and across all music publishers was only 14%. And, you know, I really wanted to kind of understand some of the data that USC Edinburgh had done regarding, you know, the creators in the industry. Where are the female musicians and female producers and the songwriters as well, and try and get some of that data. I know, Robin, you mentioned, you know, some of the stats in Canada with the pay gap. So the gender pay gap is a huge issue that I'm really vocally trying to campaign on in the UK, but shamefully these figures get published year on year and nothing really changes. And we're talking about an average and a gap of 25 to 30%, when our industry average is around 15%. And, you know, whether that's for executives, but even for female creators in the industry, you know, PRS, our performing rights organization, they have over 150,000 members, but only 18% of that is female identifying musicians, which is a confusion for me, because I know from other data that it's around 50 or more majority women that are actually studying music education and wanting to get into music. So why do we lose them? You know, UK Music as well also done some research showing that as women progress in their careers and over the age of 35, we actually lose women in the industry. So that made me want to kind of drive to understand, let's identify the barriers, and then we can start to kind of break those down. But I think, you know, that data is really useful. In PRS's again data, the top 10 female songwriters earned 70% less than the top 10 male songwriters. So when we come to answer why aren't there any women, why aren't there enough female identifying musicians on certain lineups, I think it comes down to this vicious cycle that we're in at the minute. You know, when I started managing female musicians, I got told very brazenly by radio stations and by DSPs and streaming platforms that female musicians don't test well with their audiences, or they get skipped, and therefore the algorithm affects them and they move down the playlist. So I've also done some research looking into how women are played on the radio or not played on the radio, and I looked at the top 100 radio airplay chart over the period of a year, and within that it really mirrored the USC Edinburgh's data. So only 3% out of the top 100 were female identifying producers, only 18% were female songwriters, and 19% female artists. And female solo musicians have been declining as well over the last decade. So I have just consumed all this data because I've been trying to understand over the last 2 years, what are these barriers and what can we do to kind of change them? So yeah, my goals shifted in that I was able to actually invest time in me doing some reporting myself. I mentioned one of the reports. I also did another report called Seat at the Table, which was looking at the representation of women in the boardroom and also in the senior levels across the industry. And because of what was happening in the industry at the time, because of the horrific murder of George Floyd and the subsequent Show Must Be Paused movement in the UK, I wanted to kind of look at diversity through an intersectional lens as well. So I also did a focus on Black women for that report. And again, you know, the stats were really shocking. You know, there was only 30% on average women sitting across boards, only 3 female CEOs across all of the organizations. There's only 1 female chair across the organizations, which led to me, you know, wanting to put myself forward as chair because, you know, just wanting to be part of the change that I wanted to see in the industry. So yeah, my goals have shifted because I guess I moved more into the research area to kind of gather that data. And now what I'm really working on is really trying to make action change in the industry. You know, I think that whole incident that happened with the pandemic, it gave us that time to actually reflect in the industry and in the music business, to actually sit and think about our kind of social conscience and social justice. And there were a lot of statements made about the importance of diversity in the industry. So a lot of my work now is about, you know, holding the organizations accountable and making them value their role in playing social justice and using data to help to create awareness, tell those stories, but throw that back to organizations and say, you know, it's not good enough. You're not doing enough. Nothing's changing. So, you know, there are positive changes happening, but yeah, it's always shifting. You know, we have to monitor and see what's going on in the industry. Robin, you're muted again.
I think that's really like that. It's similar things across all countries. I'd say even like it's definitely the same conversations out here. And I posted some of the studies you talked about. I posted as you're getting through them for if folks want to take a look at that. And to Georgia, how have your goals changed over time? Have things been reached and adjusted? What the future looks like and what the new initiatives are?
Well, to tell you the truth, and I feel it's a bit unfair, but it's been a roller coaster for 2 years, but in a really good way for me, in a way that at my age in the music business, I could have stayed in the festival. I actually served with them, of course, being the communication director through the cancellation of 2020 and being helpful on this transition, which of course was quite stressful for several reasons, beyond only canceling one festival and having to deal with the whole COVID situation. Because as you remember, I mean, historical facts is that Women's Day, 8th of March, 2020 was the end of a peaceful time. And I did, as I usually do with She Said So Barcelona, I did an event which we had like 3 different venues and people together and et cetera, et cetera. I don't feel guilty about it because we didn't know anything about it. And after 4 days, while in Italy, actually the 2 regions were first closed, it was the region where I was born in Bergamo. So I knew the danger and I knew that it was coming, but of course it doesn't become real until it comes. And so that was the last event we did. And then I entered the craziness of 2020 events cancellation and music business crash in a way. We did an hybrid event with Sonar, and then I decided to take a break for my mental health and for my energy to happen. Seeing that the COVID was real and was staying for a while, so it actually didn't give me, in a way, like Nadia. I didn't, because it wasn't my company. I didn't felt like that kind of moment of reflection. I had more a kind of moment of revelation that I wanted to be my own business. So despite the love that I feel towards the festival and the owners and my co-workers, but it was a personal thrive that wouldn't have happened without, as I said before, the net of She Said So, knowing that, there's two things that actually helped me during the years, and I think I signed up for them in the right time. One, for a technological reason, is LinkedIn, because I signed up a long time ago and I have 12,000 contacts. And you know that when you have contacts, being somebody like me, you know that you will find a job anytime, more or less, or you will find your company and you will have allies around you. So that was my first 6 degrees of separation kind of effort. And then it became She Said So in the right way, meaning LinkedIn can be helpful as a CRM, so technologically advanced and very easy to use. But She Said So, it's my personal ethical place to discuss and grow and mentor. And I've done a lot of mentoring during the years. There was a pivotal moment for me, and I think a lot of us in my age might have it, which is becoming a reference, as I've been, despite what I want. I mean, it's not the thing I want, but I've been a reference because of the few women that we reached certain points in different countries. So in Spain, or especially in Barcelona, you know, as a reference internationally, you feel the weight of people watching you as an example, a role model, or somebody they want to kind of aim at. And you feel responsible. You feel responsible about who you sign for, what kind of manifesto you're looking for, what's your voice for. And, you know, to tell you the truth, I wanted to sell more than music. I wanted to sell, and I wanted to promote, and I want to get out there and promote a way of being mentally in music, and a way of being even in this genre, in the sex genre and everything, a way to act and work in music that is different than the one we experience. So how it's changed, I mean, it has changed everything for me. It's like I met women that we spoke together for maybe 15 years with agent managers and everything. At the last 4 years that I was at Sonar, people came to me like, not as Sonar, but as She Said So. And they were like, oh my God, have you seen the discussion? Are you taking... So there was a shift in perception of myself towards something that not only was a music industry professional, but a music industry professional with a manifesto, with a belief, with something that was beyond, and made us all very, very comfortable with that position. And that was the click that actually opened my eyes in terms. I think I've been lucky, because everything came sit down in the place and time. But you know, being a communication director, you have to read time that way. So it's not that, you know, that's my job. If you drop the wrong word in the wrong time, that's the worst thing you can do. And so I guess this comes from my background, but it helps me serve the next. And so what I did, instead of getting into data like Nadia did, though I love data, so I envy you, because it's one of my best favorite places to be, but I went into mentoring a lot. So I reached out to people that I wanted to reach out. I reached out to a lot of women that normally I see once a year in the Women's Day, and finally phone everybody. And I've been hyper busy, maybe not enough money, but making a lot of happiness in my life. I'm mentoring currently an app that actually is fantastic, and I want to mention it because it's Munai, and it's a girl that has created, together with her partner in crime, with this app. It's an app that actually offers sounds that are healing the period pain, and is actually developed with neurophysicians. With one of the guys that has been involved through me was Tom Middleton, that some of you might know as a global communication and artist and musician, amazing artist and musician that is now devoted to that. So that the soft launch was like 10 days ago, and with no marketing push, we got like more than 3,600 subscribers in it, testing the soft launch. So that took 1.5 years, and a lot of pain, a lot of crying from their side, but also a lot of effort for me to understand that not only the music, but the startup business and lots of other side of the culture and arts, and not only culture and arts, is feeling the same. So, you know, we really, and we don't even want to get into the technology side of it, because the numbers that Nadia mentioned could be even lower than that. In startup founders, female startup founders and binary startup founders around the world. So actually I can add to it the discrimination and the need for me to kind of reach out and see what was going on aside of music. I wasn't obliged to work in music for once, except for one artist I managed. But it's like, I was really, really happy to branch out. And now I think everything is going into places again. And I feel myself that might be ready to kind of go into another direction by myself and be entrepreneur for the first time. I envy Nadia because she has the experience, but now I'm out there myself. So thanks to the communities, I reached the point of no return, in which you want to be your own boss with your own conditions and you're not scared, let's say.
I love it. Well, congratulations on that, making that decision. That's a big step. Thank you. We're getting close to the 1:45, so I'm just going to remind everyone, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat. We'll watch that. In the meantime, I'll touch on a quick answer to that and then throw out another question here. So you sort of wrapped up talking about mentorship and the importance of that. And I think that that's where I would say is sort of the key thing that I've seen change, that I think for me, I mean, I've been doing this again for almost 20 years this year, in various roles in the industry, but through being talent buyer or working with this organization, et cetera, I've always found that the role models and the mentors that I've been like directed to have been men. And I feel like we're getting to a beautiful place in the last few years where there are a lot of women in those mentor roles that is so much more important, and non-binary individuals who can be those mentors as well, who can who we can direct to folks. And I think especially in a lot of the studies I've been reading, whether they were pre-COVID or during, the thing that artists are asking for in young industry is more mentorship opportunities, and specifically a lot of female and non-binary individuals are asking for mentorship from other female and non-binary individuals. And so I think that there's we're seeing enough. We're seeing some progress in terms of seeing individuals reach higher levels of success and being elevated as to what they're doing, that there are opportunities to be mentored, not just by the old boys club, if that makes sense. And I think that that's helpful for new women in the industry, new non-binary. I think it's also helpful for new men in the industry to be mentored by a diverse and wide range of folks. And that's where a lot of our focus has been. And I know I work with Key Change, but I will pin She Said So, because they ran the mentorship program over the last 2 years for Key Change participants, and have such an incredible platform where you can identify if you are interested in being a mentor or a mentee, and they make these great pairings and you work together for a really significant period of time with this individual. And that's where I've seen a lot of the folks in Canada who are part of Key Change say they got the most benefit out of, was connecting with people, especially in this last 2 years, where it's easy to call up a friend and have a Zoom call with them, or someone you work with, a colleague, but meeting new people and getting new inspirations is different. And so being set up on mentorship opportunities, I think, has been one of the big focuses and the big benefits of organizations like yours that create that. So that would be my sort of top one as far as changes and in the goals. So we all wear multiple hats. So I just want to talk for a second about where do you see the importance of different organizations working together to create change and to build what artists and industry are looking for? Nadia, your thoughts on?
Yeah, I think collaboration is so important, and you know, there's a lot of organizations that have popped up that exist in the industry and across the industry, and they're representing different groups. But you know, like we said at the beginning, I think a lot of these are built from people's passions, and I think there's so much work and change that needs to happen across the industry. That's why they all exist. You know, I mentioned Vic Bain, but she's, you know, started the F list in the UK, which was, I loved the kind of tackling a problem of kind of not seeing female identifying musicians on lineups, and then speaking to promoters and booking agents who were saying, well, we don't get sent any female identifying musicians, so we don't know who to book. So I just thought it was a genius way just to tackle that solution so classy by creating this database, which is online, where any female identifying non-binary musicians can go and put themselves on there, and that database can be circulated around. So no longer can any promoter or festival booker say, I don't know who to book. And I think, you know, Girls I Rate as well in the UK is another great organization that is focused on songwriters. You know, you mentioned some of the work that She Said So has done in the mentoring space. And I think you can see that everyone's really focused in different areas. And I think collaborating is really important. I think there's a collective of us international organizations that have also come together, that's been led by Monica Corton from Go to 11 Entertainment, and that's the Gender Identification Initiative. And we're really trying to get good data, or get better data across the industry, by trying to get organizations and performing rights organizations and PROs to add gender and pronouns in at the really early stages of registration for music, so that we can have better data. So, you know, that's something that we're collectively working on together, which is incredible. And I have seen a lot of change. I think if you know, you asked me this question a year ago, I feel I was really skeptical about change happening. But over the last year, I have seen a lot of change. But what's shifted is that there is more collaboration. There is more openness to share information and work with other organizations and collaborate with women in the industry. So I've got a really wide network of women who all support each other. So when we know that there's big senior roles coming up, we ensure that we're campaigning publicly, but also behind the scenes, to ensure that we're helping those women get into those roles. So a lot of my work now is primarily focused on shifting and getting more women in leadership positions and in the boardroom across organizations. So, you know, I successfully have campaigned, and I managed to get a producer manager called Hannah Joseph elected to the PPL board in 2021 in November. And, you know, there was only 2 seats available. The kind of guys that were actually due to resit, they were riding those seats uncontested, which is what happens. And I ran a campaign for her, got a lot of the industry behind her, and she ended up getting the topmost amount of votes. And now we've got that representation around the table. I'm now working with PRS, which is the Performing Rights Society, the PRO, to kind of help them find candidates for their board. So for me, it's really about building my network and connecting with women across the industry and telling them about opportunities and sharing information, so that collectively we're working together to be part of the change. So yeah, I think collaborating is so important, and that's how I think we've managed to actually get change across the industry.
I love it. And Georgia, your thoughts on how organizations should work together and the importance of that?
Well, just answering to Saskia Menendez, one of the most inspiring talks I've been moderating in Ibiza during my She Said So moment at IMS was about intersectionality, which it's some kind of, right now it's a kind of word I adopted myself, because I think that, of course, when we talk female, non-binary, LGBTQ+, right now, She Said So, and Andrea and I, we agree on that, is aiming for being a platform in where the intersectionality is represented in all forms and fashion. And in that conversation that we did about intersectionality, there was Madame Gandhi, but also there was Stephen Brains, of course, from He, She and They, and you know, Stephen Brains in the UK, it definitely represents the trans community very well for me. At least I'm not there, but I know the work he does, and I know how important it's been to work with Maya Jane and, you know, developing this side of the business in which was totally forgotten and actually marketed in a very good way. And the other day I was doing a chat with him, and he was, I mean, sometimes I'm even surprised by the things that I don't know about Stephen Rains, which is that he actually does all his marketing campaign. He controls all the data. He controls all this distribution and digital distribution. So it's true that there's a side of us that needs to be conscious that by identifying and crossovering the communities are not only the communities that look like us, but also the communities that don't look like us, that are actually very well representing other realities that we want to embrace. We can, of course, represent all realities. It's very difficult to manage a goal in the right way if you represent too many realities that you maybe not, you know, close to, or you don't relate to for a normal way, not because of ethical reasons, but just because you're not that and you can't feel it. But it's true that we actually hand out the hands into this intersectionality, which means race, which means genre, which means also not only, I mean, all the what I call it in this article that I wrote is that we kind of live in a fluid world, and this fluid world needs to apply in the way we work, in the way we live, in the way we breathe, and in the way we think about the other, whatever the other is. And this fluidity that we talk a lot during the trends hashtags, for me, is real. You know, I want to embrace my mentees. I want to embrace to mentor people, for me, is also to learn from the mentee. I talk a lot about reverse mentoring. There's many things that I don't know because I was raised Catholic, white, and Italian. And I'm not Catholic anymore, but I still white and Italian. And I know that there are things missing in my culture. There are a lot of things that I need to learn again. And I'm always in the process of learning. So I think the crossover with communities, it's so important for me to learn from other communities and apply this learning constantly every day in my life in order not to speak out of ignorance. And, you know, for me, because I come from a background of journalism, ignorance is killing the values, you know, ignorance, even the blindness is killing the values. And, you know, I want to be aware and with my eyes open. And I think this is how the communities right now are, very antenna oriented in listening to the needs, but not only their needs as communities, but also the needs of others. And that's why I think inclusivity, intersectionality, the two eyes are, for me at least, the most important challenges to kind of stick to it every single day that you work in the community.
Well said. Yeah, excellent. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that so many, we just naturally end up working together and making sure that because we can't, any one of us, deem to be completely knowledgeable of the experience that somebody else is having. And thank you for sharing, Saskia. Thank you for your comments and questions, because you're right that there is sometimes less information on trans, but it's definitely, when we say underrepresented genders and female identifying, there are so many different areas of this, and I can't propose either to understand the exact experiences that everyone else is feeling. From our perspective, in terms of Breakout West, I will speak to is that a lot of the time when we look at the different organizations like that we work with, like Key Change, like, you know, I can say I live the female experience, I live the parenting experience as a parent, whether it's a mother, a father, or a non-binary trans parent. You have a separate experience within your world, and the industry isn't always that forgiving and understanding, especially if you're a musician. I know you mentioned IMS, for example. I know they're doing this year a big push around parenting and supporting music parents, and they're having a babysitter or childcare at the She Said So house for parents. So, I mean, these are all intersectionalities as well. These are all different experiences that we bring to the table. And at the end, at the end of the day, at the top level, we're all trying to have music careers and have success in what we have this passion and love for. But what we bring to that top is so different. So I would say from a Breakout West perspective, I think, I'm the first to say, I don't know everybody's experience and I can't deem to program for everyone's experience. And so what we tend to do is engage folks who have those experiences and provide the space and the promotion and the marketing for those experiences. So for example, we have an Indigenous liaison committee that will help us with all our Indigenous programming. We'll do the footwork, but we want to engage the ideas and the experiences so that we know we're meeting what we're not telling anybody what they need, but they're telling us what they need and how we can meet that. And so I think that's a big part of our organizations all working together, is that we have different people on our teams and in our communities that have different experiences and different wishes. And that's one of the benefits of collaborating together with organizations like She Said So, like Advance, like Key Change, like, and et cetera. And the list goes on to give space for each other and raise up and have the folks who have these experiences be the ones identifying how we can help, how we as someone who with a platform and with funding and with a space can help get those things pushed forward. I think we're about the end of our time. I don't want Mark to cut us off and pull the hook in here, but any final comments from Georgie or Nadia, or any final questions to throw in to cap this off? I think.
Yeah,
I wanted to thank you for giving us the voice to kind of discussing this in such a key time. I feel very close to what we all said, and I'm very close to I think it's a moment of definitely. I'm preparing a big bang again for the 8th of March. Am I actually talking every day from the 1st of March till the 20th of March? I've said yes to everything, and it's such an incredible feeling because coming back, everybody was like, "Do you want to talk in this chat?" And I was like, "Yes." Tell me what it is. And, I think we need to go back from my side. I think we need to go back to actually publicly being there offline also, and online and offline when possible, of course. But I think it's interesting to kind of push forward I actually would love everybody to kind of reach out and whatever possible, go back to meet with their friends in their communities again. Because I think most of us need this, and most of us needs to go back to kind of feeling the physical side outside of the Zoom, even if Nadia is discovering the Zoom. But I think I need a bit of a 50-50 thing in which I need to see the community for real and see what happened in the last 2 years in order to rebuild and reconstruct and revolutionize again what is really imbalanced. That will be my final words and my wish.
Excellent. Nadia.
Yeah, no, I was just going to touch again just on the importance of representation and just having that data, because, Saskia mentioned, not having that representation. And I think, a big part of what we're doing is really trying to make inclusive, safe spaces for communities to feel open to speak out. And I think that's something that's happened over the last 2 years as well. We've actually humanized people in the industry, via Zoom. We're able to see inside people's living rooms and go, oh, you have a home where, it's not just about business and work. But I would stress that, we need that data, because that helps to understand where that representation is. So, and, with Women in Control, we have various ambassadors that we work with, that we, again, like, yourself, Robin, call to advise and kind of jump in on issues for representation for disability, for LGBTQ+, IA, and like all across the industry, because, like Georgia mentioned, we look at diversity and everything that we do with that intersectional lens. And it's really about collaborating and listening. And that's why this conversation was so great as well, because it's not just about, you know, UK focused or London focused. It's about, let's see what's going on internationally. You know, maybe you've got some great initiatives that are going on that we can connect with over here, and just about bridging gaps and collaborating and talking and speaking out more, because that's how we're going to kind of continue the shift.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, Mark and Colin and Maud. Thank you for having us and for having this conversation. And I think as we're getting back to moving around the world and the countries, you make a really good point, Nadia, is reach out. You know, I'm coming to UK in beginning of June, and I will be reaching out to you. So
I will be in March, so maybe I see Nadia at AVA. Maybe I see you there.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, and you know, and keep reach out, and we're always open to conversations and keep doing what we can do to make this world more equitable and colorful for everybody.